looking down, dude.
All right, football fans, welcome to a Friday episode of the Call Sheet Daily. Coach is telling me he's going to take some notes in here. That absolutely, I don't need the video. Although I'm not trying to insult you there, Coach. I mean, the video is important. But welcome to the show, Coach Kevin Smith, doing our Friday episode here at the Call Sheet Daily. This is part two of a show I introduced yesterday on the air raid offense, its principles, its origins, its philosophy, and today on the show, I'm really privileged to have Coach Phil Longo, head football coach at Sam Houston State University, and a longtime expert on the air raid offense. Coach, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for the invite.
It's early in the morning here. I just asked Coach Longo what time he gets up, and he said usually around 4:30, 4:45. So he's already worked out and is ready to go. So he's a better man than I am. Coach, so you've had a long and interesting coaching journey. Started out as a high school coach in New Jersey. You worked a little at Division III, Division II schools, some FCS schools. Then you got some big time jobs as a coordinator, places like UNC in Wisconsin. Now you're the head football coach at a great school in Texas. Boy, it's been a heck of a ride, Coach. Congratulations on that. And what have you learned along the way, man? I'm sure you've learned a ton of football, but how's this journey played out for you?
I've always felt like, the old adage, make the place that you're at the place to be. And we have, and I really never looked ahead at the next job. I just felt like, hey, we want to set some roots here and spend some time. And that's what Tanya and I have done since we've been married. And before that, when I was single, it was always, look, I'm going to go and I'm going to get it done here. And you're just thinking about winning the next game. You don't really think about the future. I also know that when I was really young, I tried to plan out my whole career. I have a goal sheet from when I was like 21 years old and I was just getting out of college. Nothing on that goal sheet has happened in the way that I wanted it to. It just doesn't go the way you want it. This sport never happens the way you want it to. So I learned at a very early age in this profession that it's really about production where you are, and if you're doing a good job, somebody will come and find you. There'll be some opportunities, some you'll take and some you won't. And I have been I've been incredibly blessed. I have a wonderful family, got a great wife, and I'm coaching football for a living, and life could be a lot worse. So this journey I have, I'm still on. I love where I am right now. It's the first job I've ever returned to. And Sam Houston treated us very well when we were here the first time, and so we're happy here to be back. And I have a pretty profound appreciation for just about everywhere I've been.
Well, congratulations again, Coach. It's been a great career, and obviously looking forward to doing some great things as a head football coach now. But I wanted to talk to you about the air raid offense because you, as a coordinator, have put up some pretty prolific numbers in some of the places that you've been. Where did you really first begin to pick up air raid principles? Who influenced you, and how did you begin to sort of turn on to this offense?
Uh, it all really started, I think, initially when I graduated. I do what every former player does. When you start coaching, you tend to lean on what you learned when you were a player. And then, as you start doing some clinics, you start meeting some coaches, you start spending some time with people that really know football. I had quite an eye opener after about 5 years of coaching. I was leaning on all that stuff. I was studying BYU a little bit and with Lavelle Edwards, and I spent some time talking and getting to know and learning some football from Joe Tiller, who was at Purdue with Drew Brees at the time. But about 5 years in, I was pretty confident guy. I thought I had all the answers. I thought I knew everything about the game of football. And I met George DeLeon, who was and Paul Pasqualoni, who were up at Syracuse. And I started spending a lot of time around their spring ball and their summer camps. And it was an eye opener. I mean, I really learned that I didn't know much. And I remember driving away from Syracuse, heading back home to Jersey at the time, saying, this is a whole different world. Like I have no idea. And I had no idea what I was in for. And that kind of changed my mentality, and it humbled me, and it put me in a position where now I was seeking to learn. And then in 96, 97, I met Mike Leach. I drove all the way down to Kentucky and to a clinic there. And when Mike was done speaking and fielding all his questions from the coaches, we sat from like 10 to 3 in the morning, and all we did was talk football. And that's really where it started. And I spent 2.5 days with him there. I sneak into the locker room and shower. I was sleeping in my Forerunner, and all I cared about was getting up every day and kind of getting this air raid thing down with Mike. And that's what I decided to adopt at the time. I'm not brighter than a lot of my players, so I needed something that I could understand and I could teach, and it made total sense to me. It still does. And so I kind of adopted it that day, and it's really been the base of what we have done since that day that we kind of adopted the air raid, and it'll always be a part of what we do now.
Interesting. So what is it about the concepts within the offense that you like so much? Why did you become such a subscriber in it? What about that offense has allowed you to be so successful?
Well, without demeaning what anybody does, or without putting anything down about the sport, I do believe after all these years that there's the potential to make this game more complicated than it is. Um, and I don't want to do that. So we want to teach the players everything they need to know to be successful and be able to execute, but really nothing more. It's very easy for me after doing this for 35 years. It's a natural, inherent, human. It's human nature to want to teach your players what you know. Well, the problem is they don't need to know everything I've learned over 35 years. What they need to know is the best stuff that can help them execute the things that we're asking them to execute. And so we try to keep the teaching to what's a necessity, and we try to keep it to a minimum as much as we can. We also want to provide them with some freedom. I mean, I think that's a staple of this approach. The receivers have some freedom with regards to how and where and when they're going to run routes specific way. Um, I think it's a little bit simpler for the quarterback. And that allows people, and this is a big one for me, it allows our players to play instinctively, teach them less so they can. I don't want to take a 4.38 40 wide receiver, recruit him and bring him here on campus and then teach him so many things that he has to remember and learn and know. And he plays like a 4.6 receiver because we've handicapped him with all of this wealth of knowledge that we have, right? So I want him to be able to play and be the athlete that he was. That's the reason we brought him here in the first place. And I feel that way defensively. I feel that way up front on the O and D lines, and I feel that way obviously with the offensive skill players.
You know, it's interesting. We did a Zoom with you a couple of weeks ago, our football staff at Ocean City High School, on four verticals, and that's all we talked about was four verts. And we went for like an hour and a half, and I felt like we probably could have gone for a couple hours more. But afterwards, when a couple of the guys and I were talking about it, for all that detail that we discussed on that Zoom, at the end of the day, it was fairly simple. In terms of what you were asking the players to do, you were asking them to make some decisions fluidly, but there wasn't a ton of thinking, and I think that that's a huge part of probably the success of the system is that just the ability of players to have, yeah, like you said, ownership, a little bit of fluidity, but to do it fast, to not have a cluttered brain and not have slow feet as a result. And that's something that I was excited about afterwards. I thought to myself, wow, man, for all the detail coach gave us, this is very teachable, very, very applicable. Have you found that throughout the years with your system that you can kind of take it from place to place? Because you've been to a lot of different places. You've been at places that have really, really different personnel. I mean, Wisconsin, I'm sure, looked a lot different than Ole Miss. Have you found that it translates fairly well?
It does. I think that it's easy to learn. One, I think. Two, really provides on the offensive side. It provides you an opportunity to succeed even when you don't have the best players. You know, I think Mike Leach proved that year in and year out at a number of places. You know, and Texas Tech hadn't won for a long time, and he did it there with quote unquote lesser players. Did it at Washington State. He did it at Mississippi State. You know, and it just gives you an opportunity to get the most out of your guys, even if they're not the most talented. It's an incredible equalizer. Um, and then imagine what it's like, you know, as Coach Leach upgraded the roster, and they did have equal talent heading into, you know, the last couple years of his tenure at Texas Tech. They were one of the best teams in the country. You know, they upset number one Texas, and they're in the Big 12 championship game. And if they don't get upset themselves by Oklahoma, they're going to the national championship game. You know, Michael Crabtree and Graham Harrell and company. And so I think when it's an incredible advantage when you have equal talent, and that's probably where some of those more prolific games come from. So it is about keeping it simple. We've never had a playbook. I don't like. It's hard to draw a post route in this offense in a playbook without it looking like some sort of sparkler route, because they've got so many different things that they can do. We show them on film, and then we walk them through it, and then we practice it on the field. And that's, you know, human beings are visual learners, so we're going to show the video of others actually doing the same exact thing that they do. One, they can see the success of it. Two, they are visual in learning. And three, I think it's easier for them to comprehend what it is we're trying to do out there when they've seen the visual picture. And then we go out there, and then we'll jog through it, you know, and we'll talk through the scenarios. I think it takes. Sometimes I think we talk about it longer than I know it will ever take to teach the kids. But you know, like on that clinic, we're just going in depth, and we're also talking about all of the coaching points and the process that we go through to teach it. But it's a very easy play for verticals to teach. They learn it quickly. It takes longer time than that to get good at it. But we're going to run less, and we're going to run it more, and we're going to wind up being real instinctive by the time, you know, we feel like we're at a point where we can just run this by calling it.
Coach, you've had some really good quarterbacks. Sam Howell at UNC, Drake May while you were there. What are some of the absolutes that you need from your quarterbacks in this system? What are things that they have to do well for you to be able to execute this offense?
You know, I don't know that it's a lot different. Truthfully, I get asked that question all the time. It still comes down to toughness. Like, you need a guy. Matt Corral is tough, you know, and Jordan Tomu is tough. Jeremiah Briscoe, who I had here the first time at Sam Houston, who won the Walter Payton 2 years in a row. I mean, he was as tough as anybody I've coached. Drake was tough. Sam was tough. I mean, Tanner Mordecai was at the Niners. It was as tough a guy as I've coached, and those guys all had that the mental and the physical toughness. And I think without that, it's hard to play this position. And there are some prerequisites. I think you've got to be able to make the throws. You know, I think there's a certain level of arm strength you have to have. I prefer a more compact release in our quarterback than maybe a longer arm action guy. Doesn't mean I haven't had a longer arm action guy at times. Typically, those were the guys that were able to snap it off quickly anyway. And like Drake could throw the long ball, long arm action style, or he could snap that thing off when he needed to. And so, you know, it just gave him some versatility. But the key, and I learned this from Coach Leach also, is they've got to be able to think, and they've got to be accurate. You know, and so the prerequisite is definitely the arm strength and the toughness. And if they don't have one of those two things, it's probably hard to be successful at that position in any offense, or air raid or any other. But I think after that, you know, they've got to be incredibly accurate, and not all quarterbacks are. And that's probably the one area that helps me eliminate guys when I'm recruiting them. It helps me decide on the pecking order on the depth chart as we're training them and we're preparing them to compete for the starting job is accuracy. And you've got to be able to know and understand and love the game. And part of that is their passion to want to know it. You know, I've always felt like learning is about want to. Learning is about want to. If you really want to do this and you want to do it at a high level, it may take some time, may take some longer to learn some things than some others. If I even whispered it one time to Sam Howell, he was good at it immediately. And that was a blessing. That was a luxury that we had because it didn't come. It wasn't that he was a genius, although he was super smart. It was that he was so passionate about the game and loved it, and he just couldn't learn enough. And that was the characteristic and trait that a lot of our guys had. And that's what you need. And I tell them day one, if you're not obsessed with the game, you're not going to be as good as the next guy who is. And because it really comes down to how well they make decisions and how accurately they throw the football.
Hmm. Coach, I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day, and I'd love to get your take on it. Do you think once you get your hands on a guy, right now, we're talking about Division I football, if he's not particularly accurate as a quarterback, do you think you can develop accuracy, or is that something that almost by the time a kid's 19, 20 years old has been established in them that they can or they can't do it?
Without being an expert in some of the examples that I use, I would say that I think that you can improve anything athletically. So I do think you can take a guy and help him improve his accuracy. There's some coaching points and some teaching points and some different things, footwork and all that stuff that you can follow through and where your eyes are. And there's a myriad of different things. Just depends on the athlete, but it's the same as this, I would say. If you grab an athlete and he's a 4.8 40 guy, I think you can improve his 40 time. Do I think he can ever be a 4.4 40 guy? I don't. And I think we all know that, right? So I do think you can improve. I don't know if you can take a guy that's really here accuracy wise and he could become an elite guy. It's so with some it's an inherent talent. With others, they've just been doing it so long that from a young age they have progressed over the years and they are within reach of being an elite guy. And so I do think coming out of high school, if you have accuracy issues, uh, I don't know if there's time to get them where they need to be. It has to be a fairly, you know, uh, inherent, natural uh, talent and ability to be able to do that and compete at an earlier age in college. And nowadays, I mean, heck, you've got to play everybody a little bit sooner. They're not going to stick around. And so I'm looking for the closest thing to a finished product. Um, Probably do more character research and more X's and O's research on quarterbacks coming out of high school because those are obviously very important areas. And we're going to screen out the guys that aren't accurate or don't have the enough arm strength to be able to make the throws, and then we'll move on from there.
Okay. Um, about your quarterback progressions in your system. One of the things when we were talking a couple of weeks ago that I thought was interesting was that you said you really teach your quarterbacks to read progressions rather than to read off of defenders. Is that something that simply you feel marries up best with this system? Is that a product of the fact that defenses have just gotten so good at disguising coverage and become so complicated? Why progressions rather than reading defenders?
Well, I think initially, depending on the concept that you're putting in or that you're running, there are indicators, there are alignments, there are initial drops and things like that that obviously help put you in the right place. But there's so much diversity now defensively with Ripley's match coverage and man zone type concepts and all the disguising that is being done now. And I've been studying cover zero in the NFL, and you've got a team that's sitting in a two shell with safeties at 13 yards. And they're running cover zero and they're covering down on the slots with a safety from 13 yards away, and they're banking on the surprise element of that deal. Well, those are situations that are very difficult to identify, and you have to be able to do those things. You also have to be able to snap the ball off to make a quicker throw, before somebody tracks your receiver. And because things are so diverse, because things are so multiple, uh, what we want to do is keep the thinking fairly simplistic so we can get the ball out of our hands. And so most of what we do is definitely progressionary in nature. Quarterbacks have had uh, fairly low number of interceptions over the years. We've been pretty high completion percentage, and they feel comfortable, and things get very instinctive. It doesn't mean that we're not aware of coverages and what people are trying to do or employ, but everything that we do is progressionary in nature, so that we can trigger the ball quicker. And truthfully, we're trying to take as much pressure off the offensive line as we possibly can, and so we don't want to hold the football. We also, as soon as we have a skill player in open field, in open grass with some space, particularly against the zone coverage, we want to get him the football as quickly as we can so that the run after catch stuff has a better shot. And so it helps the skill set, the skill population, the receivers, the tight ends, the running backs. It takes some stress off the O line, and the quicker you get the ball off at quarterback, the less you're getting hit, and the more you can go facilitate the next play. And so those are all qualities and traits that we talk about on a daily basis. And that's the biggest reason why we go through progression instead of a defensive read, the majority of the time when we're attacking the defense.
Hmm. You mentioned studying NFL coverages. It kind of took a while for some of these air raid principles to matriculate up to the NFL. It felt like for a while there was this perception that maybe the offense was too simple. I mean, I've looked at NFL playbooks. I had a guest on the other day, Phil Eisenstein, former assistant coach of the Cleveland Browns, and he held up just their training camp playbook, the installs, and it was literally like 6 inches thick. And I wondered, like, did it take a while for some of the NFL coaches to embrace air raid principles because they just didn't feel like it would be in depth enough to handle some of the issues you're going to see in the NFL? But now, obviously, man, when you've got guys like Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray and uh, Drake May, obviously, and coaches like Cliff Kingsbury that are all air raid guys in the league, it feels like now the league has finally embraced it, and you're seeing a lot of success. Why do you think it took so long for the NFL to embrace the system?
I can't speak for NFL coaches. I mean, they do this 24/7. They have the opportunity to study this game more than anybody. And I would say I've learned a lot from what they do. Uh, it was a different approach at the time, very different, drastically different than what was going on at the time. And, that was problematic on defense because it just presented and played out differently than some other systems. But I think overall, there are some really good concepts. You see them all over the NFL. They're in every single playbook across the league. They've been there and been a part of the league for quite some time now. Um, and I think that it's the approach. It's the approach of it, not necessarily just the scheme with regards to providing your quarterback with some freedom, providing your receivers with some freedom, and all of us, everybody that has studied and run and come from that system, uh, understands there are other things that work in the world of football, and we've integrated those things in as well. I mean, everyone still asks me, "Hey, are you going to run the football?" Because of the nature of these two words, air raid. The last time that I was here, and this isn't to spew out statistics, but 2014, we ran the ball for 3,800 yards and 45 touchdowns rushing in an air raid offense. You get what you emphasize, and what we emphasize here offensively, and anywhere I've been is whatever the players do well. I just think the approach in the passing game that most people call air raid is a philosophy. It is a way to do what they're doing. Uh, and I would say probably some NFL teams have adopted the plays and they teach it their own way. Some have probably adopted, some of those schemes and they teach it the way that Mike and the rest of them do. And because it benefits the players. But I can't speak for any of them individually. I just know I see it everywhere. I know that it's changed football. Um, and we have evolved over the years. So you've got some other things that we do in the offense, but we try to marry it up with the philosophy that exists. I mean, we're going to run the ball a bunch here, just like we do everywhere. And we're trying to run the space the same way we throw the space. Put 8 guys over there and 3 guys over here, and it's not going to be hard for you to figure out where we're running the football. And that's the same philosophy we have in the passing game. So we have just expanded the philosophy to all aspects of our offense. We try to keep it simple. We're trying to get really good athletes the ball in space, regardless of what play call it is, run, pass, or screen. And I think everybody has kind of evaluated it, taken what they think they could use, what would help their system, and kind of run with it.
Yeah, I think when a lot of people think about the system, they immediately go to like, oh, spread, four wides, etc. But I was looking at some of your film from UNC back in 2022, and you guys were in 12 personnel. I mean, you were running switch verticals out of tight end wing sets. So obviously, you've managed to fit it to whatever personnel you have.
Well, when I first got there, we really had one really good tight end, so we used 11 personnel more. Um, we were blessed to have 3 really good ones the last 2 years I was there, and so we used those guys. You got to use the weapons I think that you have. That changes from year to year, even in the same program. Um, we were loaded at running back for a while, and so Javante Williams and Michael Carter rushed for 1,000 yards 2 seasons in a row together in the same backfield, and that was a luxury that not everybody always has. The year after they got drafted, Ty Chandler came in, and he was our lone every down back, and so we went to 11 personnel more, and that was the year we used our tight ends more, just because we had them, and they were the talented guys, in the population with our skill players. So it is always going to be driven with us by the most talented guys, and we're going to use them. And the system is diverse enough that uh, the offense really never changes. What changes is the emphasis each year based on your talent base.
Hmm. Coach, this has been really interesting, and I really appreciate your time. I know you got a lot on your plate. Before we get out of here, I wanted to give you a chance real quick to just talk about the job at Sam Houston State. What are you excited about? I mean, obviously you're now just finished up some spring ball. How did it go, and what are you excited about out there?
Well, we have 3 years of experience here already. We're here at 14, 15, 16. They treated my family and myself very well when we were here. We have a lot of deep friendships from our first time here. We had a great time on the field, and it's a great school. The program has won for such a long time. There have been a lot of great players and great coaches here through the years, and it really is the only place I've really, I shouldn't say the only, but one of the places I've really thought about. I would actually go back there if the situation was right. Uh, and I really thought I was headed to a league job here in December. Took my family on a 10-day vacation after Wisconsin and just decided to kick back for a change and enjoy what it's like to be on vacation in December. And I've never done that in 35 years. And so we did that. And, we talked about some other OC jobs um, in the SEC and in the Big Ten. And felt like we were going to fall back on finally taking the lead job and seeing what that was all about. And then Casey Keeler went to Temple. Uh, and I think that happened on a Sunday. And, I got up on Thursday morning. I got a workout in. I'm drinking a cup of coffee with my wife. And she said, this is the 5th day in a row that you have talked about the Sam Houston job. And I look at my phone and I realized that the job and the phone calls that I had been making, I was inundated with receiving calls from Sam Houston. I had made about 10 of my own calls down there at the time, and I just realized that what I'm really a lot more interested in this job than I'm letting myself believe. And so I went down there and I interviewed, and as soon as I stepped foot in Texas and got off the plane, I knew that that's where I wanted to be. Uh, And so when I got the job, we started the next day, went to the bowl game, and we tried to hit the ground running. And it's been a rat race ever since. I probably worked more this spring than I ever have, which I didn't think was possible. But we are elated to be here. We're reunited with a lot of great people on the campus and at the university. And so now we're trying to take this program into the new world of FBS for them. And that world has changed drastically because of NIL and revenue sharing and the portal. And obviously that's a whole another conversation. But
Absolutely.
that's what we're currently tackling now. And I'm very proud to be the head coach of Sam Houston.
Well, congratulations, Coach, man. Like I said at the beginning of the show, hell of a career so far, and I'm sure you got more chapters to write. And this was wonderful. I really learned a lot. I think a lot of people listening, a lot of coaches who tune into this program, there's an awful lot for them to take away from this. So I really appreciate your time today.
Well, appreciate yours. Thank you so much for the invite. Need anything, just give me a holler.
Thank you, Coach.
Yeah.
All right, so for Coach Phil Longo, this is Kevin Smith. This has been the Call Sheet Daily. Tune in again on Monday for next week's shows. Take care, everybody.
Good.